The morning sun poured through the blinds of my suburban home, but the warmth outside did nothing to calm the cold tension in my chest. I had lived in this neighborhood for 7 years, and during that time, my run-ins with the HOA, particularly its self-proclaimed Karen, had become unbearable. She wasn't the HOA president officially, but everyone knew she controlled the board with her sharp tongue and endless complaints. At first, it was small things. She left notes on my door about the color of my mailbox being too faded. Then she complained about my grass not being exactly 3 inches tall. I brushed it off, trying to be a good neighbor, but when she tried to fine me for having my son's police cruiser parked in the driveway, I realized this was no longer about rules. It was about power. One evening, sitting with my wife on the porch, I said it out loud for the first time. "I'm done. I'm leaving the HOA." She raised her brows. "Can you even do that?" I checked. "There's a legal process. It won't be easy, but it's possible, and I'd rather fight paperwork than keep dealing with Karen." Word spread fast, faster than I thought possible. Within 2 days, Karen was at my door, clipboard in hand, fake smile plastered across her face. "I heard you're trying to withdraw your property from the HOA," she said sweetly, though her eyes narrowed like a hawk. "That's right," I replied calmly. "I'm filing the paperwork this week." Her smile dropped. "You can't just leave. The HOA is what keeps this neighborhood decent. Without it, people like you would. People like me?" I cut her off. "Karen, I mow my lawn, I keep my property clean, and I've never asked for a dime from anyone. What I won't do is pay you ridiculous fines every other month just because you don't like me." She stepped closer, her voice low and venomous. "If you walk away from the HOA, don't expect me to let it slide. I have connections." I laughed bitterly. So do I. What Karen didn't know, and what would soon become her worst nightmare, was that my son, Jason, was not just a police officer, but a detective with the county sheriff's department, and he was tired of hearing about Karen's harassment almost as much as I was. By the time I filed the paperwork, Karen was already making good on her threats. Mysterious complaints appeared in my mailbox. Notices of fines I didn't owe. Even a letter claiming my fence was illegal. But I was ready, because if Karen wanted a war, she was about to learn she picked a fight with the wrong family. The day after I filed my paperwork to officially withdraw from the HOA, I woke up to find a bright orange notice taped across my garage door in bold letters. "Violation. Fay immediate action required." It was laughable. The notice claimed my garage paint color was not approved under the HOA's guidelines. I hadn't painted my garage in 5 years. Karen was scrambling for anything she could use against me. I peeled the notice off and tossed it into the trash. My phone buzzed, 3 voicemails from the HOA office. By the 4th call, it was Karen herself, her shrill voice piercing through the receiver. "You think you can just walk away from the HOA, don't you?" she hissed. "Well, I've spoken to the board, and we will not allow you to bring down this community with your negligence." "Karen," I said evenly, "there's nothing negligent about living free. I filed everything legally. You don't own me, and if you keep harassing me, I'll involve the authorities." She chuckled, a sound that made my skin crawl. "Oh, don't worry, I'll involve the authorities for you." 2 days later, she did just that. It was a Saturday afternoon. My wife was setting up the grill in the backyard while Jason, my son, the detective, was sitting inside on the couch, off duty, but still in uniform pants and a t-shirt. Suddenly, flashing blue lights danced across the front yard. Karen had called the cops. I stepped out onto the porch as 2 patrol cars pulled up. Karen was already outside, arms folded, pointing at my house like she was calling in an airstrike. "There he is," she shouted dramatically. "He's refusing to comply with HOA regulations. He's a threat to the neighborhood." One of the officers gave her a confused look but walked up to me. "Sir, we got a call about a disturbance and some kind of property dispute." I nodded calmly. "Yeah, I figured. It's nonsense. I've legally withdrawn from the HOA. This woman—" I pointed at Karen. who was glaring at me with smug satisfaction, has been harassing me ever since. Before the officer could respond, Karen shrieked, "Arrest him! He's breaking community law." The younger officer stifled a laugh. "Ma'am, HOA rules aren't criminal law. We can't just arrest someone because they don't mow their lawn to your liking." Karen's face turned beet red. "You have to do something. He's ignoring the HOA. That's illegal." The officers exchanged a glance. "Ma'am, that's a civil matter, not a police issue." I thought that would be the end of it. But Karen wasn't done. She pulled out a stack of papers from her oversized purse and waved them like a judge's gavel. "I have proof. He owes thousands in fines." The officer sighed. "Ma'am, even if that's true, it's something you take to civil court. We don't arrest people over HOA fines." But Karen didn't back down. She planted her hands on her hips and shouted loud enough for the entire street to hear. "If you won't arrest him, then I'll make sure you regret it." She stormed off, leaving the officers shaking their heads. Little did she know, Jason had heard the entire exchange from the window, and unlike the patrol officers, he had the authority to dig deeper into Karen's so-called proof. The game had just changed. That night, after the patrol cars rolled away and Karen stormed back to her house, the neighborhood was buzzing. Curtains shifted, neighbors whispered, and everyone wondered how far Karen would take this. But inside my living room, something far more important was happening. Jason, my son, sat at the dining table with a stack of papers Karen had tried to shove into the officer's hands. She had left them behind in her fury, and I had no hesitation handing them to him. He spread the documents across the table. "Dad, this doesn't look right. Half of these fines are fabricated." My wife leaned over his shoulder. "Fabricated?" Jason nodded. "Look at this one. A $500 fine for having a non-regulation tree in the backyard. You don't even have a tree back there. And this one, $250 for a damaged roof tile. I was on that roof last month, it's perfect." I exhaled slowly. "So, she's been making it up." Jason's jaw tightened. "Not just making it up. Look here, these invoices don't match official HOA letterheads. Some of the bank account numbers are personal." He looked up at me, his detective instincts flashing in his eyes. "Dad, I think she's been pocketing money." It hit me like a truck. Karen wasn't just harassing me, she was running a scam. How many neighbors had she bullied into paying fake fines? How many people had just written checks because they were too tired to fight back? Jason pulled out his phone. "I'll need to open an inquiry with the county. If she's defrauding homeowners, that's a criminal offense. Wire fraud, mail fraud, the works." I almost smiled at the irony. Karen had called the cops on me, thinking she could intimidate me into backing down, but she had no idea she had poked a hornet's nest. Over the next few days, Jason worked quietly but efficiently. He spoke to neighbors, collected old fine notices, and photographed Karen's handwritten violations. He even requested HOA bank statements under public records law. The deeper he dug, the uglier it got. Mrs. Thompson, an elderly widow down the street, admitted she'd been paying Karen's special fees for 2 years because she was scared of being evicted. A young couple confessed they had forked over nearly $3,000 in fake lawn maintenance charges. Each story made Jason's case stronger, and each one made me angrier. One evening, Jason spread all the evidence across the table, like puzzle pieces snapping into place. "This is enough. She's been using her position to embezzle thousands from this community. Tomorrow, I'm filing an official report. She's going down." But Karen must have sensed something. The very next morning, there was a knock at my door. When I opened it, Karen was standing there, lips pressed into a tight smile, 2 men in suits flanking her. "Good morning," she said in a voice dripping with false sweetness. "These gentlemen are here to serve you. The HOA is officially suing you for non-compliance." I stared at her, calm and unshaken. What she didn't know was that my son was already 2 steps ahead. And soon, she wouldn't just be facing me, she'd be facing the law. The day of the HOA's lawsuit hearing arrived faster than I expected. Karen had plastered notices all over the neighborhood about how I was being taken down in court for failing to comply with their rules. She strutted around like a queen preparing for coronation, convinced she'd finally humiliate me in front of everyone. But she didn't know Jason that morning. Jason walked into the small county courtroom in full uniform, a leather folder tucked under his arm. He wasn't just attending as my son. He was attending as Detective Jason Miller, a sworn officer of the law. Karen was already there, dressed in her best power suit. Her hair pulled back so tightly it looked painful. She had a stack of binders with sticky notes jutting out, like she was about to argue the case of the century. When she saw Jason, her smug smile faltered for the first time. "Why is he here?" she whispered, her voice sharp as glass. "Support," I said casually, though I couldn't help but grin. The judge entered, and the proceedings began. Karen launched into a tirade about my multiple violations, waving documents and photographs that looked impressive, until Jason stood up. "Your Honor," Jason said firmly. "With the court's permission, I'd like to present evidence on behalf of my father." Karen shot up from her seat. "Objection! He's biased. He's his son." The judge raised a hand. "He is also a law enforcement officer." Objection overruled. Jason laid out his case methodically. One by one, he dismantled Karen's claims. "Here's the $500 tree violation," he said, holding up the notice. "Photographs of my father's backyard show no such tree exists. Here's the $250 roof. Fine. Independent inspection reports confirm there is no damage. And here's the kicker. Several of these notices were funneled into personal accounts, not HOA accounts. I've traced the routing numbers." Gasps rippled through the small courtroom. Neighbors who had come to watch whispered to each other. Karen's face turned a deep shade of crimson. That's a mistake," she stammered. "You can't prove." Jason cut her off, his voice like steel. "I can prove it. Multiple residents have given sworn statements that they paid you directly, and I have bank statements showing thousands of dollars in unaccounted transactions." The judge's eyes narrowed. "Miss Karen, do you have an explanation for this?" Karen's confident mask cracked. She fumbled with her binders, her hands shaking. "This is all just a misunderstanding. I was collecting on behalf of the HOA." Jason stepped forward. "No, you weren't. And I've already filed an official report with the county sheriff's department. Fraud, embezzlement, extortion. The list is long, ma'am." Silence fell over the courtroom. Karen looked around desperately, but no one came to her defense. Even the board members, who usually backed her up, were suddenly quiet, avoiding eye contact. Finally, the judge spoke. "This case is dismissed, and Miss Karen, I suggest you prepare for what's coming next." Court adjourned. Karen's world crumbled in that moment, but the best was yet to come. Because Jason wasn't done with her. The fallout from the courtroom showdown was immediate. By the next morning, word had spread through the neighborhood like wildfire. For years, Karen had ruled with fear, writing fines, leaving notes, and humiliating anyone who dared to question her. But now, her empire was crumbling. Neighbors who had once bowed their heads when she walked by were suddenly emboldened. One by one, they came forward with more evidence. Old checks, threatening letters, and even text messages where Karen had demanded extra payments surfaced. Jason compiled everything into a thick case file and handed it off to the sheriff's department. And then came the day we'd all been waiting for. It was a quiet Tuesday morning when the black and white cruiser rolled down our street. I was sipping coffee on the porch, watching the sunrise, when I saw it stop in front of Karen's house. My wife peeked through the blinds, whispering, "It's happening, isn't it?" 2 deputies stepped out, along with Jason in full uniform. The neighborhood came alive instantly. Curtains fluttered, Doors cracked open and curious eyes followed every move. Karen burst out onto her porch, her voice shrill. "What's the meaning of this? You can't be here without notice. This is harassment." Jason's voice carried authority that silenced the street. "Karen, you are under arrest for fraud, embezzlement, and extortion." The words hung in the air like a thunderclap. Karen's face twisted in disbelief. "What? No, you can't arrest me. I am the HOA." Jason didn't flinch. He stepped forward, handcuffs in hand. "Not anymore. You're just a criminal who got caught." The deputies turned her around and cuffed her as she kicked and screamed, shouting about conspiracies and community law. But the neighbors, oh, the neighbors, they watched with smiles of relief. For the first time in years, the neighborhood felt free. As Karen was led to the patrol car, Jason glanced at me. His eyes said everything. "It's over." The cruiser pulled away, Karen's voice fading into the distance. I leaned back in my chair, the morning sun warming my face. For the first time in a long time, I felt peace. The HOA board dissolved within weeks, forced to reorganize under new leadership. And this time, it wasn't Karen's reign of terror. It was fair, transparent, and neighborly. Jason became a hero in the neighborhood, though he brushed it off. "Just doing my job," he'd say, but I knew better. He hadn't just done his job, he had defended his family, his home, and his community. And as for me, I had learned that sometimes, the only way to deal with a bully is to stand your ground and fight back. Karen thought she had power, but she forgot one thing. True authority belongs to the law, not to a clipboard and a loud voice. If you enjoyed this HOA revenge story, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more thrilling tales of justice served. What would you have done if Karen were your neighbor? Drop your thoughts in the comments